You're on the highway, somewhere in the middle of a routine drive, and you pull up behind a fuel tanker. The trailer is massive. It's carrying somewhere around 9,000 gallons of flammable liquid. And then you notice it, a short metal chain dragging along the asphalt, throwing small sparks every time it catches the road. Your first instinct, something broke. A loose chain. Maybe you should back off. Here's the thing, that chain is supposed to be exactly there. It was designed to drag. Those sparks are not an accident. They are the system working because something invisible is building inside that tank right now with every mile, and without that chain, it has absolutely nowhere safe to go. Most people, when they think about the danger of a fuel tanker, picture the obvious. A collision, a puncture, fuel pouring across the highway and catching fire. That image makes sense. It is also not the scenario that historically caught the industry off guard. The threat that killed people, the one that took years to understand, didn't require a crash at all. It came from the truck operating exactly as intended, on a completely normal route, without any visible failure, and still generating the conditions for ignition entirely on its own. The culprit is static electricity, not the faint shock you get from a doorknob in winter. Something far heavier and far less forgiving. Here's what's actually happening inside that tank while the truck moves. Fuel does not sit still. Every turn, every bump, every lane change sends thousands of gallons sloshing against the tank walls. That constant movement creates friction. Friction strips electrons off the fuel molecules and deposits them unevenly across the tank surfaces. One side accumulates excess charge, and because the entire truck is sitting on rubber tires, which don't conduct electricity, that charge has no path to the ground. It just keeps stacking up. By the time a loaded tanker rolls into a delivery terminal after a long highway run, the voltage difference between the tank and the earth directly beneath it can reach thousands of volts, quietly, invisibly, without any alarm going off. The moment a grounded metal object gets close, a fill pipe, a nozzle, a worker's bare hand reaching toward a fitting, the charge finds its path. It jumps, a spark. That's all it takes. And here is the part that most people have entirely wrong. The actual threat is not the liquid fuel. Liquid fuel is relatively hard to ignite directly. The threat is what's sitting above it, the headspace. That air gap at the top of the tank, filled with fuel vapor. That vapor-air mixture doesn't just burn. At certain concentrations, it detonates. It sits right in the combustion sweet spot, not too lean, not too rich, exactly where a single spark triggers a chain reaction that the liquid below feeds. The truck doesn't need to crash for this to happen. It just needs to arrive somewhere and have someone reach for a metal fitting at the wrong moment. So here is why the chain exists. It is electrically conductive. It drags continuously along the road surface. As long as it maintains contact with both the truck chassis and the ground, it bleeds static charge away constantly, not when a switch is flipped, not when a driver remembers to do something, but the entire time the truck is moving. Every small spark you see under the rear of a tanker is charge leaving the vehicle safely. The solution is working visibly, right in front of you, and almost everyone who sees it assumes something broke. What makes this design brilliant is also what makes it look absurd. The chain appears almost embarrassingly primitive for a modern industrial vehicle worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. That's because complexity is a liability here. A sensor can malfunction. A switch can be accidentally left off. Software can fail. A chain dragging on the ground cannot be turned off. It cannot malfunction in a way that leaves the truck unprotected. It requires nothing from the driver and nothing from the truck's electrical systems. It works whether the driver is tired, distracted, or has never once thought about static electricity in their entire career. The deliberate simplicity is the engineering. But the highway is only one of the two danger windows. The chain handles the trip. The transfer is a different threat entirely. When a tanker arrives at a delivery site, the most dangerous moment is not the driving, it's the connection. Before the driver opens the hatch, before any valve turns, a bonding cable has to be clamped to a grounding terminal at the facility. It's typically a thick copper cable coiled near the rear of the trailer with a heavy metal clamp on the end. That clamp bites onto a post at the fuel terminal and creates a hard electrical path between the truck and the earth. The sequence is not negotiable. Bond first, open hatch second, insert nozzle third. Reverse that order and you have removed the only protection at the exact moment the charge is highest and vapor exposure is greatest. Some facilities push this to its logical extreme. The driver must physically hold the cable until an indicator panel confirms a live circuit before anything else moves. This is also where trained behavior looks genuinely wrong to any outside observer. A driver who stops short of touching any fitting, reaches out and presses a bare hand flat against the truck chassis, holds it there for a moment, and then proceeds. That driver is doing everything correctly. That's personal grounding. It equalizes any residual charge between the driver's body and the truck before any metal-to-metal contact is made. The person moving slowly and deliberately, pausing to touch their own vehicle before touching anything else, is the one who has fully understood the risk. And then there's the emergency rule, which goes completely against instinct. If something goes wrong during a transfer, such as a spill beginning or a fire breaking out nearby, every impulse says to move the truck. Get it clear of the site. The trained protocol says the opposite. Do not move it. Moving the truck breaks the bond, severs the grounding connection, and reintroduces the exact risk you've been managing, now in the middle of an active emergency. The truck stays. The bond stays. Instinct here is precisely wrong. These protocols didn't come from engineers theorizing in a lab. They came from fires that had no obvious explanation. Through the 1950s and into the 1960s, fuel terminal fires were being investigated with no identifiable ignition source, no equipment failure, no electrical fault, no spark from outside the system. Investigators kept arriving at the same conclusion: static discharge. Trucks and delivery systems that appeared perfectly safe by every standard measure were generating lethal charge invisibly, finding a path to ground at the worst possible moment. The National Fire Protection Association eventually codified what the industry had learned the hard way into NFPA 77, the standard governing static electricity in flammable environments. That document became the backbone of fuel transfer protocol across North America. It was not written from first principles. It was written from actual fires. If you know what to look for now, the tanker in front of you is covered in things you've already seen without understanding. The coiled cable near the rear of the trailer, that's the bonding cable. The heavy clamp on the end is what bites onto the grounding post at the delivery site. The small inspection tag on the chain mount confirms the chain was recently checked, because a corroded or worn chain loses conductivity and fails silently. The hazmat placard on the side panel tells first responders not just what's inside, but how to approach it. And static risk is embedded directly in those response codes. It is worth acknowledging where this gets complicated. The drag chain is not universal. Some countries no longer require it on modern tankers with fully enclosed bonding systems. Some trucks use sensor-equipped grounding rods instead. The physics also shifts with weather. Static builds far faster in cold, dry air than in warm, humid conditions, which means the chain matters considerably more on a dry February afternoon than on a muggy summer day. And human error is still the largest real-world variable. Bonding cables get skipped, clamps don't fully seat, inspections get rushed. The passive chain exists partly because the rest of the system depends on people at every delivery stop, and people are inconsistent. Come back to that highway image. The chain dragging on the road, those small sparks at the rear of the trailer. What looked like a safety hazard is one of the most deliberately engineered features on the entire vehicle. Those sparks are the system working. Every one of them is charge leaving the truck before it has a chance to find the vapor headspace on its own. The most dangerous thing on that tanker was never the fuel. It was the physics of the fuel moving. 9,000 gallons in a metal shell, rolling down a road, accumulating charge with every mile, lifted entirely off the earth by rubber tires. And the solution to that problem has been dragging along the ground for longer than most people have been driving. Fuel tankers are one of the rare vehicles designed specifically around the hazard of their own motion. But they are not the only ones. Aircraft carry enormous fuel loads, travel thousands of miles at altitude, and spend the entire flight completely isolated from any ground. They build static charge on a scale that would make a tanker driver uneasy. The solution aerospace engineers developed for that problem is not a chain. It's stranger, less visible, and involves a material most people have never heard of.